Welcome to Mind Ladder, where we climb one idea at a time. In each deep dive, we explore powerful insights from best-selling books on habits, productivity, and personal growth. We're excited to guide you through ideas that can change the way you think, work, and live. Ready to take the next step? Let's get started. Today, we're stepping into the world of David Goggins, guided by your source material on his book, Can't Hurt Me. This isn't just a biography, it's presented as a raw, powerful challenge to take ownership of your life, face your demons, and do the hard things that make you stronger. Our mission in this deep dive is to extract the core lessons from this intense story and figure out what they mean for you.
That's right. And Goggins, well, he doesn't ease you in. He starts by hitting you with a pretty blunt premise. These self-limiting choices we make, they're habits, they're natural. And that whole idea of motivation, he just says motivation is crap.
Right, like it's just a temporary fix.
Right, exactly. A fleeting emotion. It doesn't fundamentally rewire your brain for, long-term change. The core message, right from the start, is that the tough stuff you're dealt what he calls your bad hand. Well, that's yours alone to fix.
And his own bad hand.
Wow. It was unbelievably tough. He goes into detail about this childhood filled with severe abuse from his father, Toughness.
Yeah, the father ran successful businesses, right? Coca-Cola distribution, a roller rink.
Skateland, yeah. But behind that success, he was controlling, violent towards Goggins and his mother. The source material is pretty graphic, describing specific incidents, that feeling of being hunted.
And the police not acting, just amplifying the terror. It really paints a vivid picture of psychological damage.
That escape scene driving all night with his mother and brother to the grandparents' place, it feels like a desperate flight.
He literally calls his father the devil himself. But freedom, as you said, didn't just erase everything or bring instant comfort. They faced real poverty afterwards.
Yeah, the image of counting loose change from mason jars just to get by. It's stark. It really is. And it highlights how survival relied on these practical habits, like his mother saving coins, something her own father taught her during the Depression.
So you have this incredibly grim starting point.
And then the source contrasts it with Goggins's pretty radical approach to overcoming it. He frames his transformation not by, avoiding pain,
but by actively seeking it out, falling in love with suffering, as he puts it.
Yeah, it's intense. He claims this is the path from being, quote, the weakest piece of shit on the planet to the hardest man God. Strong words.
Okay, so if that's the start, how does he actually tell you, the reader, to begin fixing your own bad hand? There's a challenge right in the first chapter.
Yes, the challenge. It's journaling.
Yeah.
But not just scribbling thoughts. He wants minute detail. He says, look, I showed you every piece of my dirty laundry in this book.
So you need to do the same for yourself.
Exactly. And the purpose isn't just, catharsis. It's about giving your pain shape, absorbing its power by confronting it head on, fully. You list all your struggles, all the very good reasons why you shouldn't amount to a damn thing.
And then use that list.
Then, according to Goggins, you use that detailed inventory as fuel. Ultimate fuel for ultimate success.
So taking all the negativity, all the disadvantages, and flipping it into the energy source that drives you forward, that sounds incredibly difficult.
Oh, it is. The book is very clear. This inventory is hard work. But it's framed as the absolutely essential first step. You have to own your narrative, no matter how ugly, before you can even think about rewriting it.
Okay, let's move into the next part of his story, chapter 2 in the book. There's this brief moment of hope. A kind carpenter comes into their lives.
Right. Wilmoth Irving offers support, a sense of a new beginning. Even though that relationship didn't ultimately last, it did help them move, get a fresh start in Indianapolis.
And Goggins ends up at Cathedral High School, this private college prep place. But this period shows a different kind of struggle, doesn't it? Academic dishonesty.
Oh, yeah. He's brutally honest about it. Confesses to cheating his way through classes, even on the entry exams that got him into AP classes he wasn't ready for.
Talk about massive imposter syndrome. He made the freshman basketball team, which gave him some confidence.
But he knew deep down he was an academic fraud. And his style clashed, too. His aggressive, trash-talking way of playing learned back home.
He calls himself the Draymond Green of his school.
Right. It didn't fly in this new farm country etiquette environment. Coaches moved him, sidelined him.
And things went downhill academically. Junior year, F's and D's, doctoring grades with a friend.
And his mother, he says, was just exhausted by everything. Less engaged. Never even asked to see the report cards, which he admits led him to sort of tune her out.
And he gets kicked out of the house for breaking curfew, tries living with friends, feeling cocky until the money runs out.
Reality check. And then the call from his mom. holding that letter from school. Bad grades, unexcused absences, might not graduate.
Oof. And this moment, this is what the book calls hitting a brick fucking wall called reality.
Exactly. And it's the direct lead-in to probably one of his most famous concepts, the accountability mirror.
The idea that you absolutely cannot change what you refuse to confront.
Precisely. After reading that letter, Goggins looks in the mirror, and he's just disgusted, sees himself as a low-budget thug with no purpose and no future.
But instead of, I don't know, smashing the mirror or looking away.
He forces himself to look.
Yeah.
And he has this incredibly raw internal dialogue. He lectures his reflection.
Like, look at you.
Yeah, why do you think the Air Force wants your punk ass?
Yeah.
She stand for nothing. You were an embarrassment. It's brutal.
That must have been incredibly hard. Staring failure right in the face, your own failure.
Absolutely raw. And he says it had to be raw. That was the only way to get myself right. This wasn't about self-pity. It was about delivering the unvarnished truth, hard. Because he felt that was the only way to shock himself out of self-deception and actually change course.
So the accountability mirror isn't just a glance. It's about stripping away every excuse, every lie you tell yourself, right down to the bone-deep, uncomfortable truth.
That's it. And the book suggests this isn't a one-off. It's a tool. Something you use regularly to face uncomfortable truths about your habits, your effort, your character. Is where you stare down the gap between who you are right now and who you could be.
And for you, the listener, this might mean what? Looking honestly at why you procrastinate, your excuses for skipping workouts, avoiding those difficult conversations.
Could be any of those things, whatever your personal brick wall is.
That honesty did seem to spark a change in Goggins, though. Senior year, he describes living with more purpose, studying, working out. He says that helped the hate flake from my soul.
Yeah, and he developed a new perspective on negativity from others, like racism he experienced. He started realizing it often came from their discomfort, their issues, which made their opinions, well, less valuable.
So instead of letting it wound him,
he decided getting upset was a waste of his energy. If he was going to kick their ass in life anyway, why bother? He actually started using insults as fuel.
That self-driven energy pushed him into some tough but honest jobs. Pest control. Even cleaning latrines in Air Force boot camp. Found some initial satisfaction in just doing the job well.
But that drive didn't stick initially. 4 years into his Air Force career, he says, it just faded. He even admits using a minor health issue, the sickle cell thing, as an excuse to dodge a difficult task. He recognized he was still, his words, half-baked, not yet master of his mind.
Then came the real catalyst, seeing that documentary about Navy SEALs, about Bud's Hell Week.
Right. Watching these guys suffer quit. It sparked a really strange reaction in him.
He felt jealous.
Jealous of their suffering. Bizarre, right?
Yeah.
But he went back to that accountability mirror, saw himself at nearly 300 pounds, everything all the haters back home said I would be, and felt this deep sense of being awake again. That old desire for elite special forces, it was still buried in there.
But getting there was another huge hurdle. Navy recruiters
turned him down, flat out. Prior service was one issue, but mostly his weight. Some even laughed in his face.
Wow. That must have just crushed him, reinforcing all his feelings of inadequacy.
It did. But then one recruiter, Stephen Shaljo, saw something. Saw past the weight, sensed the underlying drive. Believed in me from the jump, Goggins says. Still, even with that bit of hope, Goggins was wrestling with serious doubt.
Which brings us to that famous story, the Rocky moment.
Ah, yes. After the recruiter disappointments working this awful pest control job in an infested restaurant, he tries to go for a 4-mile run.
And collapses after 400 yards.
Total failure. Crying. Thinking, who the feck did I think I was? All the old fears just came flooding back. He was right on the edge of giving up completely.
But then, the Rocky VHS.
Yeah, puts it in. Fast forwards to round 14, the climax. Here's that line. The fight isn't over yet.
And that was it. The turning point.
It wasn't about the movie magic, really. It was about the choice it represented. Surrender to the fear and inadequacy, or somehow harness all that raw emotion and use it.
He went back out.
Went back outside, started running again. The pain was just as bad. He hit that same quarter-mile wall. But this time, he kept going, ran through it, and eventually the pain started to fade. He finished a full mile. This was the very, very beginning of him understanding how to push beyond those perceived limits.
This really sets the stage for one of the absolute core themes of the book, developing what he calls a calloused mind. And his experience in BD Guess Hell Week is the ultimate example.
Oh, absolutely. He describes Hell Week as medieval, 130 hours straight. It's presented as far more than just physical. It's a test of heart and character.
The initial adrenaline rush fades quickly, I imagine.
Completely.
Yeah.
Then you're just left with pure, unadulterated suffering. And that's where the calloused mind is forged, that mental toughness, built by repeatedly pushing through intense discomfort and pain.
Okay, so how do you actually build that calloused mind, according to Goggins?
Well, it starts with having staying power. You need to know your why. Why are you putting yourself through this? Goggins hammers this point. Have your answer ready before the suffering hits hard. Because when your weakened mind is screaming at you to quit, you need that immediate, powerful reason to override it. Know why you're in the fight to stay in the fight.
And the pain itself, he has this interesting take. Smile at pain and watch it fade.
Sounds almost crazy, right?
Right.
But the idea is to change your relationship with it, break its psychological hold. By focusing on just getting through the next second and the next, stringing those seconds together, he argues you can endure way more than you think possible.
He talks about catching a second wind, too.
Yeah, riding it through the absolute worst night of Hell Week. He argues that victory often comes not when you feel great, but when you manage to bring your best effort precisely when you feel your absolute worst. Finishing Hell Week top of his class proved to him definitively that his mind was the key weapon.
That image of him laughing in freezing mud after falling off a rope bridge in the final hour, it's such a stark illustration of that mental shift.
Totally. And that calloused mind became his go-to tool for managing doubt, for using pain instead of being crushed by it. He gives that example from the underwater knot drill.
Right, where fear and those toxic why suffer questions started creeping in.
Yes. And instead of succumbing, he had this moment. He saw a classmate with a big, goofy smile, which weirdly triggered memories of being bullied. But instead of spiraling into victimhood...
It sparked adrenaline.
Exactly. A new light blazed, he says. He learned to consciously reframe doubt and pain by actively remembering past struggles he'd overcome, what you've been through. That memory, that proof of resilience, allows you to choose fight over flight and actually channel the adrenaline.
So how does that translate outside of, life or death military training for everyday challenges?
Good question. The principle holds. You apply that same mental strategy. Pushing through a really tough project at work, or forcing yourself to do that workout you dread, or tackling a difficult personal goal. It might not give you the same physical adrenaline rush.
But it combats the self-doubt.
Right. It keeps doubt as the backseat driver, not the pilot, as he puts it.
Yeah.
Remembering times you did overcome difficulty shifts that internal conversation away from, I can't, and keeps you focused on the task at hand.
This whole approach sounds utterly exhausting, though. He even says being worn down is the price of being hard. What's the alternative, the cost of not being hard?
According to Goggins, lifelong purgatory. The constant gnawing shame and regret of knowing you quit, you didn't stay in the fight. He talks about this moment of breakdown with his mother, realizing the stakes were so much higher now with a family depending on him. The fear of dragging them back to ground zero became another powerful motivator.
He also learned vicariously by watching others fail. Like that story of the really elite athlete in BUDS.
Sean Dobbs, yeah. Talked a big game but had a cracked foundation. Quit because of foot pain that doctors later said wasn't a real physical issue.
So it was mental. He became a slave to his self-doubt.
Exactly. Goggins recognized that look of surrender from his own past failure when he quit pararescue years before. It reinforced this need for callousness, not being unfeeling towards others, but accepting the cold-blooded truths about how brutal challenges can be and how real your own potential to quit is if you don't manage your mind.
Even after Hell Week, the physical toll was immense. Running on broken legs, stress fractures.
Another test. He describes these internal pep talks, yelling at himself, "You are 20 minutes in the business, Goggins. You are a frust machine." He insists this wasn't delusion. It was consciously leveraging that callous mind he'd built. The pain, he says, actually became more manageable over time. It shifted from being just a barrier
to being proof of how tough I was and how much tougher I was becoming. He took this same relentless mindset beyond the military, didn't he? Into ultramarathons, famously attempting that 100-mile race with hardly any running background.
Yeah, that's a classic Goggins story. A perfect example of his philosophy in action. Collapsed after 400 yards initially, just like that early Rocky moment. But later, during his actual training in the race itself, he applied these principles to push through. And this is where he introduces another key tool, the cookie jar.
The cookie jar. Okay, that sounds a bit gentler than calloused mind.
It is. In a way, it's a different kind of tool, but equally important in his system. The idea is when you're deep in the suffering, whether it's mile 70 of a race or hour 10 of a brutal project, whatever you mentally reach into your cookie jar.
And these cookies are?
Memories of past successes, victories,
Yeah.
times you overcame obstacles, big ones, small ones, doesn't matter. Studying hard and passing that tough ASVAB test, losing all that weight, completing a difficult workout, graduating BUDS, getting Ranger Honor Man. Anything you've pushed through and achieved.
So you deliberately recall past wins to fuel the current fight when everything in you wants to quit.
Exactly. You don't just vaguely remember them, you savor them. Not for bragging, but as tangible proof of your capability. You use them to spark a bunch of small fires to become the motherfucking inferno, as he puts it. Because when you're in pain, your brain screams impossible. You have to consciously override that by pulling out evidence of past possibility.
He really tested this with races like the Badwater Ultramarathon, right? 135 miles in Death Valley heat.
Insane conditions. And he faced huge physical issues, dehydration, blisters from not prepping your shoes right, stomach problems, horse flies attacking him. But interestingly, his military rucking background helped him power hike very efficiently when running was impossible. And the extreme heat, while brutal, actually slowed down the faster runners, acting as an equalizer.
So he finished fifth. How?
By mentally breaking it down, not thinking about 135 miles, but just inching through, focusing only on the next small landmark, the next mile marker, cookie jar moments, presumably.
This relentless pushing, never being satisfied, leads to another core concept, almost a mantra for him. There is no finish line.
Yeah, and related to that is challenge #7, remove the governor.
The governor, like on an engine, limiting its speed.
Exactly like that. He argues we all have a mental governor that tells us we're at our limit, maybe around 40% of our actual potential. Removing the governor is the gradual, disciplined process of pushing past that perceived limit. She points to his own journey from collapsing after a quarter mile at 297 pounds to eventually running 205 miles nonstop.
How do you practice that, realistically?
The practice he prescribes is deceptively simple. When you feel tired, when you're in pain, when your mind screams stop, you push just 5 to 10% further.
So if your goal was 10 push-ups and you hit 10 and feel done, you do 11. If you plan to run 3 miles and feel spent, you run 3.1 or 3.2.
That's the idea. It's not about massive leaps every time. It's about consistent, disciplined, incremental pushes beyond your comfort zone. Over time, this recalibrates what you believe your limits actually are.
And this dedication, this mindset, it wasn't just for physical stuff. He faced huge personal setbacks too, like the diagnosis, atrial septal defect, ASD, a hole in his heart.
Right. Which suddenly explained why things like diving, jumping out of planes, felt so incredibly dangerous for him, almost like a dirty bomb going off in his chest.
Doctors called him a medical marvel for having done BUDS, Badwater, everything with that condition.
But Goggins saw it differently. For him, it was proof of the mind's power over the body. Proof he'd been achieving all this while running on a tank perpetually half full.
After heart surgery, the Navy suggested retirement. He fought it.
Yeah, found another doctor, but ultimately had to accept a non-deployable role, recruiting, because the risks of diving and jumping were too high. He admits the temptation to feel sorry for himself was immense. Woe is me.
But he refused to hang my head, which speaks to another mindset he talks about, starting at 0.
Exactly. Even after achieving unbelievable things, being the only person known to complete Air Force TAC-P training, 3 SEAL Hell Weeks, completing 2, BUDS graduation, and Army Ranger School, he didn't just kick back.
Starting at 0 means you never feel like you've arrived. The work is never truly done.
That's the essence of it. Always seeking to get stronger, more capable, learn more. He applied this practically. Instead of just socializing to fit in with his SEAL platoon, he mentions wanting DVG Jew but being an introvert, he became a perpetual student, studied tactics, weaponry, military history, constantly, training for opportunities that didn't even exist yet.
It also means being willing to be the beginner again.
Yes. Willing to embrace ignorance and become the dumb fuck in the classroom again, as he colorfully puts it. Learning new skills, getting degrees, whatever expands your mind and your capabilities.
He gives that example from Ranger School land navigation, right?
Yeah.
Where he broke protocol, used roads to make a critical time hack.
Yeah, acting as a thinking shooter, willing to bend the rules when necessary to achieve the mission, hoping for mercy later. Ranger School itself was just another crucible. Freezing cold, no food, burning muscle, risk of hypothermia.
And he focused not just on his own survival, but helping others.
He talks about refusing to show weakness, not just to take souls, a common phrase, but to actively give courage to the men who were struggling. Helping guys cross rivers multiple times, guiding teammates, that really stood out.
And that earned him enlisted honor man, plus a 100% peer evaluation from his classmates.
Which he valued immensely. He defines a true leader based on that experience. Exhausted but humble, never arrogant, fights for his men, leads by example, being uncommon among uncommon. Leadership forged in that shared hardship.
But even with all this mental fortitude, this calloused mind, he still experienced public failure. The Guinness World Record pull-up attempt is a big one.
Right, he failed twice publicly on the Today Show before finally succeeding later.
Like-
He's very self-critical about why he failed initially.
What was the reason, according to him?
Primarily putting the goal, raising $1 million for families of fallen soldiers, ahead of the task, doing the pull-ups correctly and efficiently. He says putting money first is always a bad idea. He felt he didn't respect the record itself enough, got distracted by the environment, bubbly looky-loos, the selfie era.
So a failure of focus and mindset, not just physical capability.
That's how he frames it. And crucially, he rejects blaming anything external. No blaming bad luck. Luck is a capricious bitch, he says. No entitlement. Your entitled mind is dead weight. Cut it loose. You focus only on what you earn, because ultimately the scoreboard does not lie. Failure gives you unvarnished feedback, and you have to own it and learn from it.
The book isn't all grit and military stories, though. It touches on some deeply personal things, too, like reconciling with his brother.
Yes, after more than 15 years of no contact, stemming from when his brother stayed with their father during the escape, his brother called him late one night because their father was dying.
And Goggins was ready for that call.
He says he changed over the years, forgiven his brother's decision. His mother had kept him loosely updated. His brother had stepped away from the father, even got a PhD. So, yeah, it shows a layer of forgiveness, understanding that developed over time.
He also makes a point to acknowledge the impact others had on him.
Definitely. Like Scott Guerin, a pararescueman whose story inspired him as a teenager, making him realize you never know who is watching you. And his friend Victor Pena, who was always there through thick and thin. It shows that even this icon of self-reliance valued connection and support.
So if we try to pull all these threads together, Goggins' journey from that traumatic childhood to elite military operator, ultra-endurance athlete, it really hammers home his core philosophy, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Taking 100% ownership of your life, no matter how bad your bad hand is, no excuses.
And it's built on these really distinct mental tools, the accountability mirror for that brutal self-honesty.
Developing a callous mind by systematically embracing discomfort and pushing through suffering.
Using the cookie jar of past wins, big or small, to power through current struggles.
Removing the governor by consistently pushing just 5–10% past your perceived limits.
The starting at zero mindset, always being a student, never feeling like you've made it.
And that overarching mantra, no finish line. The work is never done.
And the key takeaway seems to be that real, lasting change doesn't come from waiting for motivation or just visualizing success. It comes from relentless, grinding self-discipline. Scheduling suffering, as he puts it.
Yeah, scheduling it into your day, every day. It's about learning directly from failures, rejecting any sense of entitlement, and focusing with ferocious intensity on earning your goals. His physical challenges, even the unexpected ones like the heart defect, become almost like proof points for him, demonstrating how much mental power can expand what we think our physical or genetic limitations are.
You know, what really lingers after exploring all this is the sheer intensity of his approach. It's undeniably powerful, but it makes you wonder, for those of us not training for Hell Week or running 100-mile races, how do you apply this sustainably? How do you find that balance? You know, how do you schedule suffering without completely burning yourself out, or build that mental callousness without maybe losing empathy along the way? It feels like an incredibly potent toolkit, but one that demands really deep, careful calibration for your own life, your own battles, whatever they may be. Thanks for joining us today. If you enjoyed this deep dive into Can't Hurt Me, don't forget to like, subscribe, and let us know what book you want us to tackle next.